thank you to everyone who's coming in the room. We really are glad to have you here. My name is Nina Collins. I work at Revel. Today is International Women's Day, and we're going to record this super special event so that we can also release it on our podcast, Raging Gracefully. We're here tonight for an evening of storytelling hosted and curated by Sari Botten at Oldster, which is this amazing new magazine. You can find it, it's oldster.substack.com. And it's a really great magazine. I'm going to let Sari talk about it, but she started it in the fall. She's she's the woman in the middle there with the glasses and the bangs. And she was most recently the editor for Long Reads, which was a really great, I guess still is, but she did a really fantastic job there. And now she has started and is running Oldster. She's also the editor of a great book called Goodbye to All That, Writers on Loving and Leaving New York. There's a picture of it. It's really, really very good. She's a very esteemed literary editor in New York. We're very lucky to have her. She teaches writing courses at Catapult and in Bay Path University's MFA program. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, New York Magazine, The Village Voice. Gosh, remember The Voice? Remember when we used to read The Voice? Harper's Bazaar, Marie Claire, Moore, The Rumpus, all sorts of things. And she lives in Kingston, New York. So Sari is our curator of the evening, and Oldster is a magazine where she's publishing amazing writing by interesting people, I guess over the age of, I don't know, Sari, what, 40?
No, everyone's an Oldster.
Everyone's an Oldster.
I'll explain it.
Well, I like that idea, because we've actually at Revel, this hasn't been unveiled yet, but we've kind of decided to start letting go of using any ages on our site and just say it's for a certain woman in a certain place. So what's going to happen this evening is we have 4 amazing writers who have written to the theme, women who came before us. And Sari's going to introduce them. In between, we'll take questions. You can write questions in the chat, and we will do our best. And I think that's it. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Nina. It's so nice to be here. Such a thrill to collaborate with Revel on this event and essay series. The theme is The Women Who Came Before Us. And I've been really fortunate to have these 4 great writers, agree to write pieces on commission and come and read them to you. And let me just tell you a little bit about Oldster Magazine, which is actually a Substack newsletter. The tagline is exploring what it means to travel through time in a human body at every phase of life. So it's not just men, it's not just women, it's people of every age. It's about the experience of getting older at every phase of life, because every time you move into a new phase of life, you're saying goodbye to an old phase and you have all kinds of feelings about it. And it's something I've been obsessed with for a long time. And so I decided to explore it in this magazine, and it's been really fun. And I now get to collaborate on this series. So with no further ado, I'm going to invite our first reader, Abigail Thomas, to read her piece, which is called Nobody Sat in Big Mom's Chair.
You gave me the title. You're better at titles than I.
Oh, wait, I didn't read your bio. Hang on one second.
Okay, sorry.
You know who you are, but
Yes, I do.
Okay, Abigail Thomas has 4 children, 12 grandchildren, 1 great-granddaughter, 2 dogs, and a high school education. She is 80 years old. Her books include Safekeeping, A 3-Dog Life, What Comes Next, and How to Like It. Photo credit. Oh, sorry. Time to stop reading. Okay.
Okay, should I go?
Yes.
Yeah, please. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. Big Mom lived in an old house on a short road that stopped abruptly at the Atlantic Ocean. It had once been an inn built back in the middle of the 1800s. There were 7 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, the furthest of which was always cold. And if I went in and, God forbid, had the nerve to sit down, There came a sudden urgent need to get out, get out, get out, which I did immediately. The house harbored a ghost, a gentleman in a dark blue suit who had been seen occasionally on the stairs, although not by me, and it became obvious that the cold room belonged to him. So, yes, the house could be scary, but we loved the ocean and we loved Big Mom, and our family made the trip to Amagansett every summer to stay with Big Mom and our Aunt Rhoda, who lived with her. They always had a dog. The first was Winston, an English bulldog named for Churchill, and he was fussy. He wasn't interested in walking down the street they lived on or any other street in Amagansett. He preferred to take his walks on Main Street in East Hampton, one town over. Rhoda's job was to hold his leash and carry a roll of pink toilet paper with which to wipe Winston's behind if necessary. Big Mom's was to drive her Jeep alongside the curb, a companion to Winston's walk. She slowed when he slowed, stopped when he stopped, resumed when he resumed. Otherwise, he simply sat down and refused to budge. There wasn't much traffic back then and fewer parked cars along Main Street. And anyway, that's the story, and I'm inclined to believe it. My dogs boss me around too. I can close my eyes and picture Big Mom's chair, its seat cushion flattened by years of use. I have a similar chair with a similar cushion. Nobody but Big Mom sat in her chair. Nobody but me sits in mine. Next to her was a little table that held a radio on which she listened to the Brooklyn Dodgers. She told me that after they lost a World Series, the Dodgers fans all over said, "Wait till next year." And for ages, I thought that meant the whole stadium stood up at the end of the last game and hollered it together. Big Mom got up every morning at 5, and I followed downstairs on tiptoe lest my sisters wake up. For a little while, I had her all to myself. Pasted to the front of her bed box was a cartoon cut out of the New Yorker. It depicted a little girl sitting at the table looking with disgust at her plate. "It's broccoli, dear," says the mother. "Well, I say it's spinach, and I say the hell with it," the child responds. I loved to look at that. Big Mom always percolated her coffee for exactly 14 minutes, and she poured hers into a big cup, adding evaporated milk and saccharin. She gave me a smaller cup, which was mostly milk and sugar. I was fascinated by saccharin. How could anything so tiny sweeten such a big fat cup of coffee? And after a certain amount of begging, she finally allowed me one saccharin per week. I sat in the rocker she kept in her kitchen, and it creaked as I rocked, and the floor creaked under it. And we talked about what I don't remember, but I remember that she listened. There were geraniums on every windowsill. There was always something going on at the back of her stove or in the oven, and it always smelled good. Often a delicious smell was meant for the dog, chunks of beef cooking in broth. She made applesauce out of unpeeled Granny Smiths cut up and simmered in orange juice. She cut the crusts off our sandwiches, sliced our morning toast into strips she called soldiers. Her recipe for fudge included the line, "Boil until the bubbles look as though they don't want to burst." I still make birthday cakes as she did, with a buttercream icing and melted bitter chocolate dribbled like a Jackson Pollock all over the top. She spent part of every morning in her room lined floor to ceiling with books, her writing room, and there at her desk, she paid bills and she wrote poems. We knew never to disturb her then. I wish I still had those poems. I remember them as short and lighthearted. They were published in women's magazines under a pen name, but I only remember the first name, which was Ruth. Her real name was Mabel Lillian St. John Dawson. Nobody called her Mabel. She was everyone's Big Mom. At 5 o'clock, when the sun was over the yard arm and we kids were back from the beach, salty and sandy and sunburned, people came for drinks and whatever delicious thing Big Mom had made. I think I remember scallops wrapped in bacon, but I could be wrong. Interesting people, artists, writers, a dancer. And while they drank their pink gins and ate those scallops and laughed and told stories, we kids could do as we liked. We drifted unnoticed into the hush of her parlor. and looked at treasures under glass domes and bronze statues of women with one arm flung into the air and a Buddha whose belly, when rubbed, gave good luck. We touched things we were forbidden to touch: a gold clock that didn't tell time, a tortoiseshell comb, an ivory ball containing infinite number of smaller ivory balls, each one carved in a delicate filigree. Big Mom was born toward the end of the 19th century. Old was the right age for a grandmother. It never occurred to me she'd ever been anything else. What I'm thinking about now for the first time is how at home with herself she was. She never seemed to want more than she had, or to exist anywhere other than where she was at any given moment, or to be anyone else. And at 80, neither do I. Big Mom's rocking chair has been mine for years. The wood was darkened by long use, the upholstery torn, cotton batting coming out. My son Ralph took it apart, sanded and refinished the wood and put it all back together. I rocked my grandchildren there as I had once rocked myself. Big Mom died in her sleep. My aunt sold the house. I wrote a poem. After a death, we clean up, we pack books, we give away the evening bags, a dozen pairs of gloves. What we want, we take. I take the portrait that hung above her bed, a woman with dark eyes shining. From every closet, every shelf, we save what we can: curry powder, spoons, a radio. But nobody gets the air. Nobody gets the silvery haze she kept in these rooms. Nobody gets the light.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Big
Thank
Mom.
you, Abby.
Oh, thank you.
So we're going to have one or two questions. But first, I want to ask you, are you sitting in your chair, the chair?
I'm sitting in my chair.
Okay. Wow. So the chair made an appearance.
Oh, yeah.
So, Nina, how should we grab questions?
I don't know. People are writing in the chat just lots of adulation and how beautiful that was. So far, no questions, but it was gorgeous. The one question I had, Abby, is I was wondering if your experience of your mother's death was similar. I loved that we give away the evening bags. I so remember that when my grandmother's died. I was just curious how it compares to your relationship with your mom's.
No, because my mother was in a nursing home by the time she died, and all of her stuff it was already wherever it was going to be. But
Yeah.
Mom died in this house she lived in for 1,000 years. It was, yeah,
Yeah, beautiful.
it was a hell of a house. Even the hinges were so beautiful. It was so old. And if you went up to the attic, in all four corners of the attic, there were little wallpapered alcoves where I guess people who had worked in the inn when it was an inn.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful house.
That was great. Well, your work is really wonderful. Someone just wrote in the chat, your work is great. It's magic. And I'm forever grateful for your eyes on my work. That's by Jessica Handler.
Oh, Jessica. Thank you. So is this, Jessica.
Yeah, really good.
All right. Well, thank you, Abby. Let's move on to Naz Riahi, who is going to read her piece called The Unobliged Woman. I'm going to read Naz's bio right now. Naz Riahi, she, her, is an Iranian writer and director. Her work explores the spaces, emotions, and opportunities of otherness and isolation, informed by her experiences as an immigrant. She was named one of Filmmaker Magazine's 25 New Faces of Independent Film in 2021. Her short film, Sincerely Eric, won a Vimeo Best of the Year award and was named No Budget Best Film of the Year. It has garnered praise from Brooklyn Academy of Music, the New York Times, T Magazine, and Fast Company, among numerous publications and cultural institutions. Her essays, journalism, and fiction have been published widely in outlets such as Food and Wine, Pipe Wrench, Long Angeles Review of Books, Long Reads, Catapult, The Fader, Flavor Pill, Atelier Doré, Guernica, and more. She holds an MFA from the New School, lives in Brooklyn, and can be found on Instagram, just like everybody. Naz.
Thank you so much, Sari. It's such a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Revel, for hosting the event. I was so honored that you asked me to participate in the series among such great writers. And as you know, had a little bit of a hard time writing this. So I wrote something that surprised me as well. It's called The Unobliged Woman, and I keep accidentally referring to it as the Unhinged Woman. Is maybe how I'm feeling a little bit these days. But I'll just read it off the screen, so it might look a little odd because I'm looking towards my camera, but here we go. It's so much easier for me to admire a tree, a bird, or a vista than to admire a human with our capacity to hurt. But if I were to admire someone, it would be a woman who lives truly and wholly for herself and the work of her mind. Does this woman exist? Does she exist unjudged, venerated even? I've searched for her my whole life. I've aspired to be her, to live entirely for myself and the work of my mind, writing and making films. Not to be a woman isolated, but one who lives and thrives amidst the world, its social pleasures and pains. When I separated from my ex-husband, he told me I was selfish, a sentiment my brother and mother have occasionally shared. He suggested I learn to live for someone beside myself. I thought about our life together, the meals I'd cooked for him, the vacations I'd planned, the jobs I'd held when he was underemployed, the many painful visits to his hostile racist family for the sake of being a good partner. And I remembered also, he once told me I didn't have to be a writer just because it was what I'd always wanted to do. Instead, he suggested I could try real estate because in his estimation, I was good at sales. I wouldn't say I lived for this man. In fact, I left him, but I certainly didn't live for myself while I was with him. 8 years that will never be mine again. In the film Nomadland, Fern, the protagonist, lives seemingly for herself. She's lost her husband, her job, and her home, and is traveling the country in her camper, taking seasonal work. She rejects the advances of a man who she likes and who offers her an easier life. She rejects also her sister's comfortable home. But Fern is half in her situation because of her life circumstances, because of the impossibility of life when you're poor and aging in America. It's not a dedication to her mind's work that's put her on the road. When I was in my late 30s, I confessed to a man I was seeing that I didn't want children. He had 3, all nearly grown. He said to me confidently, "You'll change your mind." "I've never wanted children," I said. "My sister doesn't have kids," he said. So she's very self-involved to her detriment. His sister is a great avant-garde musician who maybe was choosing to live for herself. 50 years before Fern in Nomadland, there was Wanda, a film written and directed by Barbara Loden, who also stars as the title character. Wanda surrenders the custody of her children to her husband, admitting that she's not a good mother. She then wanders alone from a field to a factory where she briefly works, to a movie theater, to a bar, hoping to find someone who will take care of her. Eventually, she meets a robber amidst the robbery and walks straight into his life. Wanda has done something extraordinary in the context of the era when the film was made, and even today. She has chosen herself over her children, yet not exactly herself either. Like Fern, Wanda is a victim of her circumstances and her gender. She is poor and misunderstood by the people in her life. Unlike Fern, she still seeks connection and to be understood, and in doing so, she chooses a foolish, violent man for whom she inadvertently begins to live. Wanda and Fern are fictive, but they represent a true struggle of womanhood. They show me a way of life that both thrills and scares me. The painter, Agnes Martin, left New York City in her 50s and, like Fern, drove across the US and Canada for almost 2 years. Eventually, she settled in New Mexico and famously received very few friends and visitors for the rest of her life. Though she did participate in her career, writing, painting, exhibiting, and giving talks on her work. While her life was dedicated to herself and the work of her mind, she did isolate herself. Can a woman who chooses to live for herself only do so if she hides away from the inevitable judgment of society? History is full of men who have lived for themselves, dedicated their life to the work of their mind, while having partners, lovers, even children. Norman Mailer and Ingmar Bergman weren't known for the way in which they obliged and pleased their families. Quite the contrary. Bergman treated his children as an afterthought, and Mailer nearly killed his wife by stabbing her in a fit of rage and reportedly saying to a room full of guests, "Let the bitch die." After Barbara Ludden's death, her husband, Elia Kazan, a much more famous and more powerful filmmaker than she, claimed all sorts of credit for Wanda. Even a film that at the time was so small and unseen couldn't be hers. My grandfather, Rahim Moini Kermanshahi, was a poet and lyricist, one of Iran's most notable. I grew up watching him in his study from morning to evening, reading and writing. Occasionally, my grandmother, Eshrat Moini, interrupted him with tea or to let him know that it was time to eat a meal she'd prepared for him. In the evenings, he often held salons. My grandmother cooked and prepared for their guests, served tea, and joined the audience as my grandfather held court, reciting poetry, talking about art and politics. Recently, I stumbled upon a video of the writer Olivia Lang's home. I love her writing for the mastery of the sentences as much as the brain behind them. I appreciate the portal she opens into other great artists' lives and her analysis of their works and motivations. A glimpse is about all I can handle. I don't read biographies because I'm afraid to know too much about anyone whose work I like. People who are real are disappointing. This is a way of saying I'll likely disappoint you and myself. Lang's home is bright, filled with flowers, art, and books. There's a friendly dining room table, which I can envision surrounded by her friends and topped with heaps of food and wine. There's her garden, which she tends to lovingly, even a rose there called the poet's wife. Her husband, Ian Patterson, is a poet, though he's not even mentioned in her Wikipedia page. In the video of her home, he is barely present, just a mention of his many perfumes and his poetry shred, and a few seconds of him cooking lunch. I think about Lang and her home often, about where she might sit when she reads, where she might write, and how passionate she is about tending her garden. I know very little about her, yet when I think about her life, I am washed over with contentment and hope. I can see myself in that world of books and art, of living primarily for me with a partner who isn't my primary focus, but exists alongside me in love and collaboration. This is one definition of admiration, pleasurable contemplation. Yet, as I write this, I am half somewhere else, thinking about my own partner, his struggles, how they affect and consume me. My focus is shoddy, my energy for my own work depleted. At the moment, I am half somewhere else with him, half here writing, and wholly afraid to lose myself. Still, I search for that woman, the one who lives for herself and her mind's work.
Great. Thank you.
That was so beautiful, Naz. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing. I love that you came up with the idea of a certain kind of woman that you've been searching for, as opposed to one woman in particular. I mean, it's great to write about one woman in particular, but I also just love this idea of this, and I admire that kind of woman too. So to hear you kind of label it and call it, give a name to it, and also, kind of really present a well-argued piece that is also just really moving. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Does anyone have any questions?
Well, someone in the chat just asked where this was published. So I'm going to say it was published on Oldster, Sarah's newspaper magazine, which is wonderful. So we'll put the link in the chat again.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I read it quickly. I was afraid that I was reading too slowly and I was going to go over my time. So I sped up.
I think you did great.
I thought you read it perfectly. I mean, it just made me think so much about just women. My mother was an artist and was alone. And I think as I get older, I struggle with not really wanting to live with anyone. Like this idea of a woman living alone, the idea that the way you describe Agnes Martin, it's so, I mean, Abby could probably speak to it also better than like, I'm only 52. I don't know what will become of me, but that is starting to become much more of a fantasy, I have to say.
I was really surprised by how many women commented, but also reached out to me, emailed me, DM'd me on Instagram about this piece, and that specifically so many people said it was something that they'd been struggling with, but hadn't been able to articulate or put a finger on. And that was really surprising to me, but also wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's such a taboo in talking about women and women who don't have children or obligations. And so I wonder if you're hearing from women who otherwise don't talk about this I mean, yeah, I know that in my own life, I've seen, there's been so much judgment from older people, that if you don't have certain obligations, that you're dismissed. So.
Yeah, I think that's true. Really interesting. Someone
That's really
commented, this
go ahead.
piece is so moving, thinking of kids leaving home and making time for me now, which, yeah, I think that's something we're all, as we get older, the freedom, I guess for a lot of us, for those of us who had children getting older, there's this opportunity for all this freedom. And then there's this whole different women who choose not to have children. And just the question you bring up early on of being selfish or not being selfish. I've been accused so many times by my children and my lovers of being selfish. And it's like, really? I mean, I don't know. I think men are pretty selfish often.
Someone asked if this is something that has in the chat, that is a feeling that has changed for me over time. And I think I would say, as I've gotten to know myself and the space that I'm allowed to occupy, it has changed for me because as we all know, it's really hard to face down the judgment of society and the expectations of society, and particularly around the question of I've never wanted children. And that has been one aspect of this for me, that every single person from my aunts and my mother to my lovers have said to me, oh, you're going to change your mind. And so it's kind of a little bit of an extension of that, and saying, no, it's not that it's an active choice. It's not that something that befell me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was in my late 30s, a neighbor from upstairs ran into me in the hallway, and out of nowhere he just blurted, if you want to have kids, you should do it soon. I was single and lived alone, and he was like, my sister is in her 40s and she regrets it, so if you're thinking about it, just do it. And I was like, what? But he felt, I mean, and it came from a kind place, but it was like so presumptuous. And I don't have children, and I'm happy I don't have children, but anyway, we should move on. Thank you so much, Naz. So we're going to move on to Emily Rubin. Emily Rubin's debut novel, Stellina, was a selection in the Amazon Debut Novel Award contest. She is a recipient of the NISCA 2022 Literary Arts Grant, the Sarah Verdone Writers Award, a finalist in the International Literary Awards, and a Pushcart Prize nominee. She co-founded Dirty Laundry, Loads of Prose, a reading and performance series that takes place in laundromats around the country. Her short stories and essays have appeared in journals including Good Works Review, Lit Break, Confrontation, Poets and Writers, The Smart Set, and All the Restaurants in New York by John Donahue. She founded and runs the Right Treatment workshops in New York City and upstate New York cancer centers. She has taught fiction for Bard's Lifetime Learning Institute and Columbia University's Narrative Medicine program. She's working on a novel about urban homesteading and lives in Columbia County, New York. Emily is going to read a piece about her mother and Chanel No. 5, both turning 100 last year.
Thank you, Sari. Thank you, everybody. So great to hear everybody read, and so wonderful to be here. Revel, thank you for bringing us all together. So my mother is 100 and a few months and still going very strong. So we've had a chance to catch up quite a bit in the last year. And while I was planning her 100th birthday, which happened in a time when COVID was on the downslide, so we actually got to have a party, I started writing this piece about she, and I found out that Chanel No. 5 turned 100. So that's where this came from. My first, an epigraph from Coco Chanel. Perfume is the unseen, unforgettable, ultimate accessory of fashion that heralds your arrival and prolongs your departure. My mother, Carol Rubin, turned 100 on November 8th, 2021. That year also marked the 100th year of the introduction to the world of her favorite perfume, Chanel No. 5. Two classy centenarians, heralds of longevity. Coco Chanel insisted on a delicate and heady confidence for the set. The scientists and parfumiers presented 10 different samples. She chose sample number 5. The formula for a bottle of number 5 contains no less than 80 ingredients. The top notes features doses of lang lang and neroli with an undercurrent of jasmine. Each 30 milliliter bottle contains 1,000 jasmine flowers from Grasse and May 12 roses. Adding to that are sandalwood, bourbon, vetiver, and vanilla. The singular scent reminded Coco of fresh laundry. The daughter of a laundress, she was smitten. The winning formula represented the beauty, mystery, boldness, and constancy of reinvention of the feminine. The perfume and my mother came into the world during the jazz age with independent flappers and smoky dance halls. My mother was born in the Bronx. The scent was a bridge to chic with a nod to the risque. My mother lives on her own in a house filled with art, books, overflowing clothes and linen closets, and an ever-present bottle of Chanel No. 5. Upon discovering the bottle, I asked if she had memories attached to the perfume. She reminisced about the first bottle she received in 1944, a gift from my father, Morton, when they married at the height of World War II. She met my father, a City College grad, on his way to the service in 1943 at an uptown college dance. Their first date was on the Staten Island ferry. My mom remembered the blue polka dot shirtwaist dress with matching hat and clutch purse she wore. My father, a man with a roguish sense of humor and a great admirer of women, recalled imagining the dress falling away. He was 25, she was 22. They were married in 1944. My father in his blue Navy uniform. My mother also wore blue. I thought it improper to wear white during wartime, she said, when we found the dress stored in a box in a crawl space. During World War II, Coco Chanel and her team stopped all advertising from 1942 to 1943 to save money on advertising and made the perfume available to the military tax-free, along with other essential items. The fragrance was a gift of gratitude to the women holding their own on the home front or in service during the war, representing survival, love, and sacrifice. In November 1921, my grandmother, Rose Begun, had a difficult birth in the lying-in hospital on East 18th Street. My mother's head was pushing into Rose's rib cage, and the specialist's manipulations successfully birthed the baby. I still cringe hearing the story at family functions. Mother and baby survived. As Rose recovered, my grandfather, Solomon, relieved and thrilled, returned uptown to the Grand Concourse to receive the delivery of a baby grand piano. This was his gift to Rose on the occasion of their firstborn. The piano dominated the front sitting room of every subsequent Bronx apartment. My grandmother played Beethoven, Puccini, Mozart, Jewish folk songs and theater tunes, humming while she played, often breaking into full-throated, off-key reverie. During World War II, my father was stationed at a base on Narragansett Bay, Rhode Island. My parents began married life living in a Quonset hut on the base. My father heard from friends in the European theater about soldiers lining up to purchase Chanel No. 5 to bring home to wives, sisters, mothers, and girlfriends. My father bought a bottle in the commissary, one of several my mother would receive from him during their 60+ years together. The popularity of the perfume soared when the playfully seductive Marilyn Monroe ignited passion across gender lines by announcing she daubed it here and there before bed, anywhere you want to be touched, quote. When I was growing up, during our hectic mornings getting ready for school and work, I was forever curious about my mother's morning rituals and ablutions. The girdle she pulled on appeared ridiculously restrictive. That the feat of engineering called a garter belt and the rolling of stockings upward to hook in the belt's clasps, a true test of balance. Getting ready for her job as an elementary school teacher, my mother smoothed her hair and clothes in the mirror as if styling a mannequin. As she dabbed number 5 behind each ear, her neck lengthened just like Alice after drinking the potion. The perfume was nectar that nurtured confidence. When I lift the rectangular diamond cut stopper of Chanel number 5, the ghosts of early memories arise. In our modest Cape Cod home, I remember my parents arriving home after a night out with friends in my early single digit days, with my bedroom door ajar, a wafting of Chanel number 5 mixed with the heat from gin and flirting took shape in the muted hallway light, silhouetting my mother's hourglass figure. I was awakened by the muffled clatter of their arrival, thanking the babysitter Ruthie and getting a report of the night. Well, there's a bit of a mess from finger painting. We made popcorn and watched creature features and read some Alice in Wonderland. She threw up a little after the monster was electrocuted. She wants to be tough, but scary mixed with buttered popcorn maybe wasn't a good idea. I listened, lifting my head from the pillow to hear my mother's slurred whisper, but could only decipher laughs and the shuffling of my father pulling out his wallet against the worsted fabric of his back pocket, fingering dollars in his veiny hands. My mother would tiptoe into my room, and through tight slitted eyes, pretending to be asleep, I would catch a glimpse of T-strap high heels dangling in her hand. She relaxed and exhaled after peering over the granny square quilt, assured I was safely tucked in. Maybe she noticed my mischievous fake sleep smile. While straightening her dress, she would slink out backward, gently closing the door. I would fall off to sleep knowing she was safe at home. In the morning, she would return to wiggle me awake with a puffy face and smudged mascara under shrouded eyes, with vapors of Chanel number 5 lingering, along with her satisfied exhaustion from an evening of fun and the beginning of a new day. With Chanel number 5, the makers brought our everyday dreams into the realm of romance and elegance. And for my mother and me, memories of the past slide into the present and prevail in stories still to be revealed, like the scent of our individual and shared chemistries. Breathe in, be present, breathe out, imagine the future, and prepare for the hint and possibility of new memories here, there, and everywhere.
Oh, that was marvelous.
Thank you, Emily. Oh, so many beautiful details. It's really evocative. It takes me right back. You know, I didn't live in the 40s, but I go right there. Are there any questions or anything for her that we should? Lots of people just saying it's wonderful, and also talking about their memories of Chanel number 5.
Yeah, and I just wrote something in the chat by mistake directly to Emily, but I was just saying I was really struck by the kind of romantic nostalgia in both Amy's and Emily's pieces, you know, Cape Cod and Amagansett, and just this like smells, and it's really beautiful and such a nice contrast to Naz's piece, which is so different and makes us think about such different things. Just beautiful.
I like there was the perfume in Naz's piece too, but I think there's also this thing about the sensuality of women at all these different ages, you know, that's so I felt like I'm lucky enough to be able to explore that with my mother, even at 100, you know, where she's we recently went to see the Christian Dior exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum, you know, the dresses, you could see her just feeling herself in one of them again, you know, so that sensuality is something for, I think, an older woman is such an interesting thing to explore.
Yeah, it is true. You felt it in Abby's piece too, talking about her grandmother and feeling so present in her body. I can't remember the language she used that was so beautiful, but yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, beautiful.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our final reader, Blaise Allison Kearsley. And I'm going to read your bio. Blaise Allison Kearsley is a Brooklyn-based writer and the creator of How I Learned, a storytelling and reading series. Her work has appeared in Long Reads, Catapult, The Boston Globe, The Weaklings, Midnight Breakfast, and the anthologies Mortified, Cringe, and Non-White and Woman. To learn about her and other vanity projects and how to pronounce all of her names, visit www.blaiseallisonkearsley.com. And did I say it correctly?
You did. Thank you.
I think because I have an unusual name, I like pay a lot of attention to how people's names are said. Although I've worked with you online, but I've never actually heard your voice. I've never said to you, how do you pronounce your name?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
And Blaise is going to
don't-
read a piece called A Jet All the Way, or some of it, or I'm going to let
Yeah.
you go. I'm not going to,
I just wanted to, since we were talking about the decision to have kids or not to have kids, my mug says condoms prevent minivans. So I thought that was.
that is brilliant. And I would like one of
Yeah.
those.
I will get you one. I will
Okay.
happily get you. I'll buy them for everyone.
Okay.
So thank you for having me here.
Pleasure.
It's an honor. Also, this is my first Zoom meeting. So I feel like so much of my life has been on Zoom, but this is the first time I've actually done something that doesn't have to do with classes and meetings. And so this is quite nice. Okay. Yeah. So this is called A Jet All the Way.
We're having a teeny bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know if there's any adjustment we can make. Yeah, the sound is a little garbled.
Okay.
But-
Got any better?
Much better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is better. Thank you. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So A Jet All the Way. According to all the cable and made-for-TV movies I watched in the 80s, adolescence was the time in a young person's life when everything worked out perfectly in the end. If you were a teenager with a problem, all you had to do was find an adult to turn to who'd instantly recognize your potential and help you figure out what to do. So I imagined that when I got to high school, I'd find that person, a cool-ass lady whose way of being I could aspire to, who made me believe in what was possible. That person would look at me with recognition, maybe because she looks like me, not in features, but in some esoteric, unnameable way. For years, I searched for this whole vibe in the face of basically any woman over the 18 who walked into any room. Are you that person? Are you that person? I was a rudderless only child, pinched in between my savagely separated parents' chaos. So I imagined that person as a metaphysical amalgam of Toni Morrison, Claire Huxtable, Glinda the Good Witch from both The Wiz and The Wizard of Oz, Iona in Pretty in Pink, and Jo Beth Williams as Carol Ann's mom in Poltergeist. Not a big ask, really, is it? I also imagined high school would be like the movie Fame, breaking into song and dance in the cafeteria, hanging out in a leotard at my locker with all my friends, and watching Leroy Johnson, the hottest guy in school, roller skate down the hall in satin gym shorts. In reality, not only did the high school I went to not have lockers, we didn't even have guys. My nearly all-white, all-girls school was embarrassingly tiny and afflicted with a lack of vision. We were legitimately known around town as the lame school, and no one came to our dances or any of our plays. All our drama classes had to offer were weird exercises like inventing and then embodying the sound and movement of a specific kind of make-believe machine, and then your classmates had to guess what your function was, which I found totally pointless and degrading. So tectonics shifted when Margot Daly spun in as a first-year educator, hired to be the new drama teacher. Ms. Daly had tulip petal lips and a subtle red hue to her short, straight, floppy hair, but she didn't look like any famous white woman I could think of. Students memorized monologues from Greek tragedies and wrote their own late-night talk shows under Ms. Daly's bubbly but rigorous direction. She didn't simply ask us, if you were a dog, what kind of dog would you be? She herself was a whole dog rescue shelter in a 1,400 square foot auditorium, which is actually just a gym with no athletic equipment. She was brought in at the forefront of a handful of young, cool teachers. They were so useful, it seemed as if they could be our friends. I rarely saw her walking from one class to the next without a student by her side. Sometimes she gave us a glimpse of her personal life, joking about the perils of dating, how she was always getting set up by somebody's mother's neighbor's cousin, and how this guy was too full of himself and that guy wore bugle boy jeans. I imagine Ms. Daly could be that person, the one I was looking for. Tiny as our school was, I wasn't in Ms. Daly's immediate orbit for very long. At that time, despite my many years of performance experience, rigorous dance numbers through the house when I was home alone, and singing the Cures Just Like Heaven with my best friend on the streets, Camel lights burning between our fingers just to see if strangers would give us money, my anxiety and my insecurities were actually debilitating. Since drama was an elective after sophomore year, I elected to sit it out. I was too afraid to take part in public performance situations in which things were actually expected of me, and those things counted on my already problematic report card. A part of me still wanted to be in drama class so that I'd feel included, but it wasn't like I wanted to pursue acting. It wasn't worth the trouble. Besides, I already knew I wanted to be a writer. If I got okay grades in English, it was due solely to the writing, not because my writing was good yet, but because I had big ideas, and I even did my English homework most of the time. Ms. Daly remained a fixture on the periphery of my compact world. My friends were among her favorite students. Some of them, like me, didn't even take drama. She invited them over for a pizza party one weekend, which I wasn't supposed to know about, and I was pretty sure they called her Margot to her face after school. I was hardly the only one with trouble at home, but maybe mine was more public and looked less surmountable. Maybe it was the perceived difference between trouble at home and trouble. I was in deep danger of flunking out. I didn't discover until decades later that I had ADD, inattentive type, which meant an inability to focus, trouble understanding directions, illogical thinking, and a tendency to forget how to handle tasks I'd done a million times, and a general sense of overwhelm. And I had dyscalculia, which meant my brain couldn't process anything related to numbers. I worked at a coffee shop for 6 months, and at shift end, the manager would count my register, side-eye me, and say, "The till is off," which might as well be a lifelong metaphor. The lack of teacher-student boundaries always felt wrong to me, but with a population of only 50 girls and a handful of faculty members fresh out of grad school, maybe it was inevitable. While I resented the fact that no overseer kept that shit in check so that no kid would feel left out of the fold, I would have been fine with the fold if I were on the inside of it. I couldn't yet articulate the somatic otherness back then, that all those girls were white, or the optics of being the only student of color among my friends, or the disillusionment and how jealous I was of the girls who were kept under Ms. Daly's wing. I was left to wonder what was wrong with me. Was I such a lost cause? Junior year, Ms. Daly announced our first all-school musical would be West Side Story, the epic retelling of Romeo and Juliet set in New York City among rival street gangs in a race rumble. She quickly assured us she'd import as many boys of as many ethnicities from other schools as she could find. Everyone was buzzing. Margot Daly had the balls to do West Side Story at a school like ours, and who didn't love West Side Story? In hindsight, not everybody loves West Side Story. I can't do math, but I know Hispanic and Latino representation equals 0% of our student population. It doesn't help that the 1961 movie's Maria is played by Natalie Wood, and her brother Bernardo is played by a Greek-American actor with a caked on George Hamilton tan to make him look Puerto Rican. But I'd watched that musical repeatedly from the time I was in Wonder Woman on the Roof. As an ethnically ambiguous kid whose skin color didn't match that of her dark-skinned father or her white-pink mother, I thought about West Side Story. I reimagined it often. I swooned over the score, the iconic images on the screen, the colors, and the choreography were like candy. In my mind, I was every character all at once. I already knew the dialogue, the stage directions, all the finger-snapping sequences, so I could have been a shoo-in. But I couldn't actually sing, and I'd never auditioned for anything before. The thought of trying out gave me the sweat. I did manage to pull myself together at the last minute. Even after a humiliating vocal audition, I was cast as Snowboy, one of the Jets. I threw myself into 4 months of rehearsals. It felt like very important work. I mostly mouthed the words to some of the songs because I didn't want anyone to hear me, but I was a good dancer and my bad attitude and two-line delivery were on point. Rehearsal was the thing I looked forward to the most in life, rivaled only by weekends spent drinking, smoking, and making out with boys at friends' houses perpetually void of parental supervision. During the last of just two performances, some of us, a tight team, a family, wept in the wings at intermission, realizing it was all half over. The next year, I requested Ms. Daly as my senior advisor, a last-ditch effort to make her that person. I hadn't processed that she was just a few years older than my new 22-year-old boyfriend. He was an actor, musician, flagrant two-timer, whom I'll call Kevin because that's his real name. One weekend, he said, maybe we should break up. Then he said, I cannot be with you. Then he said, let's just see what happens. I ranted to Miss Daly about it in an advisory meeting on Monday. She looked exhausted just listening to me. What should I do? I pleaded. Tell me what to do. He looked down at the desk and said, I just think you deserve to be with someone who knows they want to be with you. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. I looked out the window and said nothing else. That I might deserve someone who knew they wanted to be with me wasn't just about a guy. That someone was also extended to me. It was about all of my relationships. It was about my future. It was about my self-regard. I last saw Margot, I call her Margot now, over 2 decades ago. I was working at an organization that helped middle school and high school teachers integrate discussions of racism and anti-Semitism into their English, history, and creative arts programs. I saw Margot at her wedding. I wasn't invited. I happened to be dating a guy whose Hungarian parents went way back with her family. Everyone was at the wedding. Maria, Bernardo, Riff, almost all of the Jets, and a few of the Sharks. My old close friends were closer with Margot than ever. They were in the wedding party. Ms. Marshall, my 11th grade math teacher, asked about my nonprofit work and said, I am so proud of you. Then she added, we always thought of you as the hellion. My complicated relationship with that school, with Margot at the center, needled me. I tucked into myself and kept to the table in the back with the Hungarians. Margot and I reconnected last year thanks to social media. Her cheery, casually confident voice sprang from my phone, and I could imagine her on the other side of the call, pushing her hair back, letting it fall behind her ears in feathered layers like the shuffle of a deck of cards. We caught up on her life, her role as a teacher and as the creative director of an award-winning art center, and as the mother of 2 teens, and my life, also as a teacher, a writer, and also a mother of 2 cats. Then we turned back to 33 years ago. You are a hard nut to crack, Margot said. Lots of stomping up the stairs, lots of tears and contentious parents, and just such sadness. I knew you didn't believe in yourself. I heard her shift in her chair and pop a crunchy snack into her mouth. But there was this light in you when you connected, she said. I made you a jet for a reason. I was trying to pull you into the community. You get pissed and you'd push us away. But we knew that. That was just part of the job. I leaned my elbow on my desk in my pandemic work from home situation and rested my head in my hand. I smiled to myself. There was no way I was going to let you not try out, Margot said. Margot wasn't that person I looked for, imagined with such longing, whoever that woman was or could have been, but she came pretty close. I always thought I finally decided to audition for West Side Story because I didn't want to be left out, and I knew I'd never forgive myself if I didn't take the chance. I know now that was half the truth. It may not be an actual memory, but I can imagine Margot poking her head out of the classroom, and as I walk down the hall, her eyes follow me. She lowers her chin and asks, Kearsley, you're trying out, right? Without the long suspended lilt of a question.
Lovely.
Thank you so much, Blaise. I love this
Thank
piece
you.
so much. I love that you have, it's similar to Naz's in that you are talking about a type of woman, and then you're talking about the woman who sort of embodied her for you, although not quite. I thought of you this weekend as I watched the new West Side Story, and I understand that there are some people who have some problems with it, and I get that, but I also just really, it's hard to hear that score and watch that dancing and not be just completely taken away with it.
Yeah. I haven't seen the new one yet, actually. So I have to see it soon.
Yeah. It was good. And it's interesting. It brings up ideas of, how there can be so many problematic things about a piece of art, but it can also be so powerful still. And obviously it was also powerful in your life because of, its connection to Margot and everything else about it. So.
Yeah.
Are there any questions in the chat for Blaise? A lot of compliments.
A lot of compliments, tons and tons.
Beautiful stories, 4 beautiful stories, and they're all so different. I love the way, the range of emotions and tones and ideas.
I'm so grateful to all 5 of you. I have to say, I had a really stressful day, and just sitting here for an hour, I feel so nourished by all of this. I really do. It's really
Thank you so much for reaching out and getting this going, Nina. It's
all these women. So I could talk to you. I have so many things to say to all of you. And Emily, I didn't know that you teach at the narrative medicine program. I got my master's there.
Oh, did you? Yeah. That's great. What a great program.
It's a great program. I'm doing something for them next week. So Nellie, I'm still in touch with all of them. I'm doing some,
Oh, that's
I don't
great.
know.
Yeah.
Something. Yeah,
I
they're
let
great.
them know about the reading. So maybe, some people
Maybe
in,
some people are on.
I haven't been there for I haven't been there for a while, but it was wonderful to work with the I had 4th year medical students and 1st year medical students writing stories. It was great. It was really fantastic. Yeah.
And Blaise, like you, I'm biracial. I just felt connection to all of you. Like Naz, I want to live alone for the rest of my life.
Blaise, I wanted to ask you a question. So you reconnected with Margot over social media. Have you kept in touch, or is it like just that one talk? Like does it feel weird to be connected?
It doesn't somehow. I mean, we had that really wonderful conversation, and I actually felt like I got to say some of the stuff to her that I kind of explained in the story. That feeling of being left out and the otherness, and she heard a lot of it, and so there was something really healing, and there was a lot of closure there. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. So
has Margot read the piece?
She hasn't read it, not that I know of. I should probably just like preemptively send it to her so that I'm not, waiting anxiously for an angry call or something. But I think she would I think she would be happy with it.
I think it's a very flattering portrait. It's very real, but I think it shows her to be like a real, like to have real heart.
I agree, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for her for sure.
Well, let's hear again where we can find everyone. Sarah, do you want to give your coordinates a little bit?
Oh, you mean like my social
Your-
media stuff?
Yeah. Your
Okay.
website.
Sari Botton, one word, SARIBOTTON at all the various socials is where you find me.
And the website for the magazine is
Oh,
on Substack.
oldster.substack.com, although you can also get to it through oldstermagazine.com.
And please
put the-
subscribe. It's really,
I'll put
really
that in the
good.
chat.
Yeah. And I guess I just wish everyone a happy International Women's Day.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Together today.
Thank you,
Very good.
everybody, for coming, all the people who attended. Thank you, Nina, for having us. Thank you, Abby, Naz, Emily, and Blaise for writing these pieces for us and reading them so beautifully tonight.
Yeah, it was really gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I have all these images
Well
in my
done.
head.
It was great to work with you, Sarah, on it.
It's a pleasure, pleasure. This is my favorite thing to do. So I hope some of you will subscribe to Oldster Magazine. Wherever I didn't explain, everybody's in Oldster. It's in my about section, but I'm exploring getting older at every phase of life. There's no like bar for how old or how young, like everything. It's just about everybody. So
It's wonderful. It's really great writing.
thank you.
And
Thank
for
you
those
so
of you who are listening who aren't on Revel, please join Revel. We're a free platform where women can create events and groups and talk to each other. And it's all about kind of nourishing each other, basically, as we did tonight. So
much.
thank
Lovely.
you all. Yeah. Okay. Good night,
All
everyone.
right.
Take care.
Good night.